I'm going to talk about England because I know a little about British history, and I have a lot of English pictures. Now, in fact, some of the images you'll see are from objects which are on display in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, where I'm a guide. And I'm also going to incorporate images of some historic buildings, country houses, which I feel are appropriate for the periods that we're looking at and are good examples for you to visit if you have the opportunity to go there. So why am I choosing 1660 as a start date? This is the year that we saw the restoration of the monarchy in Britain. Charles II had been in exile on the continent for around 10 or 11 years, a period that we regard as the Commonwealth. This was when Britain, for a short period anyway, was a republic under the guardianship of Oliver Cromwell. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But if I look at the next 100 years that followed, it saw a remarkable period in the development of English style, including art, architecture, fashion, furniture design, and interior design, culminating in 1760 with the accession of King George III, which itself heralded a completely new era of British style. But in order to understand what happened in 1660 and these new changes that were introduced, we need to just look back briefly at what was going on before. Under the Republic of Oliver Cromwell, life was very austere. The nobility had largely fled into exile. The Puritan movement was in full sway. The theatres had been closed. Life was generally pretty miserable. And to give you an idea of the flavour of the time, this is an example of fashion in the pre-1660 era. This is called a buff coat, and virtually anybody who could afford one, because these were quite expensive, would be wearing this sort of garment. It's called a buff coat because originally it was made of buffalo hide, but generally became it's simply made out of leather. You would wear this even if you were well off. It really was an indication of how depressing life had become. But then in 1660, this happens. We see the arrival of King Charles II. The Merry Monarch, a very fashionable gentleman, had acquired a great taste for continental fashion while he was living abroad. And we can see in this bust of him by the artist Honor Pell the glamour of the man. He was a very ostentatious character, well over 6 feet tall. The Merry Monarch, as I referred to him, he had many mistresses, and he brought with him a number of fashions and ideas that he'd picked up while he was living abroad, amongst which was the full curled wig.